I hope everyone's having a good evening out there. We're going to start tonight's late night jazz session off with a little number from The Blue Crow. Just kidding. Someone stop me. I'm out of control. Sorry, someone said I sounded like a late night DJ, so, why not? Let's start a tutorial that way. So today we're going to be doing the crow nail from my Halloween set. Okay, we are going to start out with just putting a base of some sort of milky white polish on there. Nail Thoughts is a really great builder base. They're milky white. I'm going to end up using the Gaoy on this one, just so it's not clear. Cure that, and then we're going to go on to the actual base. The background for this nail is basically two cat eye gels that we marble together. This little example on the right, I did kind of show, but I did this in stripes, and I didn't like that quite as much as what we're going to actually do, which is the more homogeneous swirly doos with the blue and purple cat eyes. I am going to start off with a generous base coat of one of my favorites, Born Pretty's Indigo Eggplant. That is the purple cat eye. And you don't want it to be super thin and stingy because we are going to take a toothpick and swirl everything around. So you want enough gel on there so that it's not just going to scrape stuff off. Once we've got a nice coat on there, we are going to go in with our second color. This is the Gaoy 3331. It's basically a really nice blue magnetic particle gel with pretty much a clear base. So I'm just going to blob this on my palette, and I am going to just put blobs of it on there with a toothpick. You just want a somewhat even distribution of the blue and enough on there so that you can do a nice marbling job. Now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to use the toothpick, and I'm kind of just doing swirls out of the blue into the purple, kind of doing curved star shapes. I'm basically violating all of their personal space. I want each of the gels to go into the space of the other one so that we are mixing them, but we are still seeing both colors. Once I've done my sort of initial round of blue star shapes, then I'm just going to go back and do swirls over the swirls, and that's just how we're going to get the pattern more intricate instead of these more big blue star shapes on there. And you just keep doing little short swirl lines, so that it keeps it somewhat separated still. And this is what I have, and if there's a little area where, oh, that's still too much purple, just add another little drop of blue on there and do a new little marbly section. Once you are happy with your little marbling pattern, we are now going to activate the magnet particles, and we're just trying to get as wide of a swath of brightness to this as possible, because we are going to matte coat this, and getting that nice light, effervescence look of the cat eye really helps this stand out. And it's okay if your marbling looks a little messy and a bit mucky at this point. It really gets crisp once we get the matte coat on it. Fully cure that. This is what I have for mine. And now we're going to go in with the Gaoy powder resistant matte coat. I really like this stuff, and it is specifically the powder resist matte. And all of these supplies are already up in my Amazon storefront because I already posted the tutorial to make the crow in the silicone mold, just so you know. And there is our background. You get much more detail back once the matte coat is on there. Now it is time to do all of our craggy little tree and vine work on our border. I've got the MissPinkNail black non-wipe sculpture gel that came in a set of the black and white. And I also have the Kokoist black accessory, non-wipe accessory bond. I like it's also known as the MPA brand. It's MissPinkNail / MPA, I believe. The Kokoist is a little softer. The MissPinkNail, it's almost like a spider gel. And it feels a little out of control when you're using it. Like it's not quite spackling onto a long brush as you'd like, but you actually get better dimensional and thin, very fine dimensional lines with the MissPinkNail stuff. So I kind of liked that better on the nail, even though I felt like I was always almost about to smear it everywhere I didn't want. So I am just loading it onto the brush, and big globs kept sticking to it because it's such a stiff gel. But you do want it sort of globby on the brush because that's what it will lay down onto the nail. If you don't have enough on there, it's so stiff that you will get a really faint line instead of it being able to lay down almost like a stream of caulk on the nail of your line work. And so I just start from one corner and I'm just sweeping down the nail. And this is supposed to look like craggy vines. So, you know, we want them to cross over each other, and to keep this looking like a sleek border, you really only need, especially in the midline areas of the nail, maybe, you know, like 2 to 3 lines going down the length of the nail. And I'm also pinching them so they're almost just like a single line at that midpoint, because it just helps the nail have this nice, elegant feel to it. And then we just kind of swoop them around the base and around the tip of it, and kind of get some things to cross over here and there, and maybe add some little short things that are crossing over and some things that slightly interfere into the center parts of the nail. And then we also want an assortment of, you know, the little ends of branches that are just sort of, you know, stopping in places. Just sort of give it that slightly woven, messy, vine branchy feel. And here's a good example coming up right here of not having the brush loaded enough. You will see how it just sort of skips along the nail. It's not really laying down a nice little 3D dimensional branch. Okay, so once you feel like you've got a pretty nice frame or border of craggy branches for this, we have to start thinking about where we're going to place the crow, because we are going to put a little branch swoop out so that the crow can be sitting on it. And if you want to see how specific instructions for doing this crow, because it has very thin little feet, just watch the video before this, because it's a video on using silicone modes, and I use casting this crow just as the example in lieu of this tutorial, because there's some really good tips and tricks to make sure your gel is curing. And basically I do a cheat with acrylic powder, so then I don't have to worry about it at all. And that's not the only way to do that. There are many other ways to avoid uncured gel, but the cleanup with acrylic powder is really nice in the silicone molds. So I'm just kind of visually marking where I think I need that swoop of the branch to come down for his little feet to hit. And then I did it very lightly at first to see if it, you know, generally lined up. And then I'm going to go in and do the real line. And then at the end, we'll see, I wish I would have bent the branch down quicker, because it kind of goes in line with the crow's tail, and it all kind of blends in together, but it's not that big of a deal. And now that I have where my crow is going to be established, I'm just going back in and finishing off all my little line work, adding some little, you know, extras here and there. But you can just see how we get really nice, thin, elegant feeling lines with that particular gel, even though it feels a little out of control to use it. And now we're going to go in and do a tiny bit of blue chrome accent work. We got to glue the crow on, and then you'll notice I go back and I do an outer border of gloss top coat. It just really brings back a little bit of that bright sparkle to the nail with the cat eye and the blue chrome. And I'll show you a little close up here. This is my final border branch work for this nail. We've cured this for 60 seconds, and we are now ready to do some light chrome accents. We are not chroming all of the black. That's what keeps it kind of special, and just sort of you catch it in the light. You can use Nail Mart USA's Stardust Shimmer. That's a really nice blue purple. Or the Bonnie B Purple Beam. That's also a really nice blue purple. I'm going to use the Bonnie Beam on this because it's a super finely milled one, and I felt like I could get more exact detail on these particular, because everything is so fine on here. And I don't want to overload my brush with the chrome powder. I just want a little bit on there because I'm just doing little chunks and sections and just swoops of individual branches. And see right there, I had way too much on the brush and didn't even realize it because I don't want to chrome everything. I want some of the branches to stay black. The chrome is just being used as a highlight to keep it special. And one thing I have noticed about the Bonnie B purple beam is that it's really dull when you're just doing it. You think it's not doing much, but when you put the top coat on, it just like comes to life. And because these are just accents, I am going to be very good about cleaning everything off, using a brush. I want this all nice and neat. Okay, this will just kind of show where those blue highlights are hitting when the light hits it. And now we're going to go in with a top coat. And I'm just going to show you, I did a couple other backgrounds. You can flip this nail around either way. And it also works on shorter nails. It doesn't have to be this extreme long nail. But you can see how I've done a gloss border around it. And so you just kind of pick a convenient edge where it makes sense to have some shine, a shiny border. Basically, we need to cover our branches that have chrome on them and seal that in. And then pretty much on the top and the bottom is where we're also going to include a little of the cat eye area so that we get some of that cat eye brilliance back, because that's where we sort of have the branches swooping in more and we have a little more of an area to work with. And don't worry about including all of the branches that are sort of swooping into the center. Anything that's outside of this nice little border area we're making glossy, we're just going to go back in by hand and do it with a thin little brush to get the top coat and seal the chrome in on those individual branches. And I should note, I'm using my crappy designated I don't mind if chrome particles get in it top coat. So if you have one that you do mind, just put it on the little palette so you don't destroy the whole bottle. And we do want the dimensionality to stay with these branches. So on where there's a lot of branches, I'm kind of doing a thinner coat of the top coat because I don't want to destroy all of that 3D effect of them. Here's what we have. And if you got a little messy with the top coat, don't worry about it. The powder resist matte coat is really good for patchwork. Some matte coats, it really doesn't work when you're trying to fix something you messed up. There sort of becomes a weird little line. You can always see where you did the little patch job. This stuff is pretty good as long as you don't skimp on it, as long as you don't do it super, super thin. Oh my God, we're finally on the last step. Now we just have to glue this damn crow on. So this crow is completely opaque and black. We don't want gel, uncured gel sitting on our nail for weeks. So we're going to use a semi-solid non-UV glue to glue it onto the nail. See that? Without UV. I suggest picking up that little crow that's going to want to fling everywhere. Once you cast these things are so hard to keep a hold of. Pre-visualize where you want to place that crow, because once you have that globby glue on there, it's a done deal. If you put it down in the wrong spot and then try to move it, now you're going to have all of that shiny glue smeared all over our nice matte surface. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Set it to the side, let it dry, because then the very last step is we are going to seal the edges, basically like caulking, with the matte coat, but we only want it on the little edges. You do not want to coat the crow with anything because you will destroy all of the detail work. But we do want to caulk around the edges so that that crow can't catch on anything. And then that will take care of any of this glossy glue that smushes out from underneath, which is going to happen. So that does the final cleanup, and then the crow is sealed in too. I promised I would show this, so I'm doing it right now. Here is what it looks like if you try to put, this is the super, super thin matte coat over the top of the crow. If you just try to seal the entire crow in, that's the larger sized crow from the mold. You just lose all of the detail. Look at the difference between those two. So that's, when you cast something, that's pretty much what you have if it's one of those super surface detailed casts. You don't really want to be putting much over it. Okay, so the final step, I'm going in with my super skinny brush and I'm just doing that edge around the crow to seal it in so it can't catch anything, and it will cover up the glossy glue. That's before I've cured it, so it still looks glossy, but now everything is sealed to that surface of the nail. Okay, and finally, here are our finished nails. A couple different versions, different styles of nails. Crows have slightly different placements. That second one in is the original one from the Halloween video. That's the one we just made. And then our two other smaller sample ones where the nail is flipped the other way around. So there you have it. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's programming featuring the Blue Crow. And a special shout out to our longtime listener, Fanny.